The buzzing sound of chatter filled room 2B as 27 second graders shifted in their seats, excitedly clutching the items they brought for Show and Shine Day. Hand-painted crafts, new gadgets, sparkly toys, and colorful storybooks sat proudly on desks. The walls were lined with bright posters and smiling stick figure drawings, the sun shining warmly through the windows. Everyone looked excited. Everyone, except one little girl. Zaria Malik sat in the second-to-last row, shoulders curled tight, hands folded over a tiny painted rock, her show and shine item. She held it like it was fragile, like if she loosened her grip, the whole world might laugh at her. Her short, curly hair was tied back with a fading yellow ribbon, and her warm brown skin seemed to dull under the fluorescent lights as her nerves grew. Her smile, usually sweet and hopeful, barely flickered at the edges. But the thing drawing the most attention in the room wasn't her rock. It was her shoes. Worn out, peeling at the soles, fabric faded and scuffed. One side was held together with a piece of neatly placed tape, something a 7-year-old had tried to hide with marker ink so it would blend in. It didn't work. And her teacher noticed. Mrs. Ashford, a tall woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper tongue, clicked her heels against the floor as she walked between the desks. Her lips were painted too brightly, stretched into a smile that rarely reached her eyes. "All right, class. Who's next for show and shine?" she called out, clapping her hands with rehearsed enthusiasm. A chorus of excited murmurs erupted. Mrs. Ashford scanned the room, then locked onto Zaria. Her smile shifted, subtle, but unkind. "Zaria," she said, tapping her nails on the desk, "why don't you come up?" Zaria froze. Her fingers tightened around her painted rock. Her legs felt heavy. Her worn shoes scraped softly against the floor as she stood. She took 2 tiny steps toward the front, shoulders shrinking further with each inch. Then Mrs. Ashford's voice sliced through the room. "Oh, no. No, no, class," she announced loudly, pointing down at Zaria's feet, "before she shows her item, can we talk about something?" Zaria stiffened. A few kids turned. Then all of them did. "Look at those shoes," Mrs. Ashford said, pursing her lips. "You should be embarrassed showing up like that, Zaria." A ripple of laughter burst across the room. Zaria's breath caught. She looked down at her shoes, her cheeks burning, heart pounding so loud she could barely hear. Some kids leaned away dramatically. One boy pinched his nose and said, They look like they smell." Another added, "Why don't you just throw them away already?" A girl whispered, "My mom said only poor people wear things like that." Laughter spread like wildfire. Zaria's hands shook around her painted rock. Her eyes stung. She wanted to melt into the floor and disappear. But Mrs. Ashford wasn't done. "Children," she continued, lifting her chin, "there's a reason we take pride in how we present ourselves. Zaria should have learned that by now." More giggles. More whispers. More eyes pinning her down like she was something to stare at, not someone to protect. Zaria fidgeted with the sleeves of her small blue sweater, curling her toes inside her painful shoes. She stared down, anywhere but at the kids laughing at her, anywhere but at the teacher who was supposed to protect her. A tear slipped out. She wiped it quickly before anyone could see. But someone did. Someone in the back row. A man sitting silently in the parents' viewing section. Dressed in simple jeans and a soft gray hoodie. Head slightly bowed. Hands folded in his lap. Most assumed he was a shy father or a late volunteer. None knew the truth. He was Michael Harrington. A billionaire. Owner of several major companies. A man who donated to schools anonymously, preferring to sit quietly and observe instead of making speeches. And he had noticed Zaria the moment she walked in. He saw her shoes. He saw her hands shaking. He saw the way she kept glancing around to make sure no one noticed how small and out of place she felt. And now, He saw her cry. His jaw tightened. His eyes hardened. He leaned forward slowly, watching every second. Back in the front of the room, Zarya tried to steady her voice. I brought a rock that I painted, she whispered. A girl snorted. A rock? Seriously? Mrs. Ashford rolled her eyes and said, well, Zarya, at least your rock is cleaner than your shoes. Laughter exploded again. Zarya swallowed hard, her throat burning. Her vision blurred as the room swayed around her. She hugged her painted rock closer to her chest, whispering to herself. Please stop, please stop. But no one stopped. No one tried. Except the man in the back, who slowly rose from his seat, but stayed silent for now, eyes on every cruel detail. Zarya took a trembling step back. Her worn shoe flapped slightly with the movement. More laughter. Her heart cracked. And at the exact moment her shoulders collapsed inward. As if trying to hide from the world that hated her for something she couldn't control. Her eyes flickered toward the back of the room. For a split second. They met his. She froze. His expression wasn't pity. It wasn't disgust. It wasn't shock. It was something else. A promise. A silent, steady, unwavering promise that everything she was feeling right now would not go unanswered. And as the laughter swelled, drowning her in humiliation. That was the moment her story changed. That was the moment someone stood witness. And soon, someone would stand up. But first. If this moment breaks your heart, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories. The laughter slowly died down as Mrs. Ashford moved on to the next student, but Zarya didn't move from where she stood. She stayed frozen at the front of the classroom, staring at her painted rock, its bright swirls of blue and gold blurring behind the tears she refused to let fall. She finally walked back to her desk in small, stiff steps, the kind of steps that tried to hide her shoe soles flapping with every movement. Each time her heel lifted, the loose sole snapped softly, like a cruel reminder of everything the class had just mocked. She slipped into her seat quietly, folding her hands in her lap and holding her rock there like it was the only solid thing she had left. No one noticed her. No one cared. But the man in the back row never looked away. Zarya bent her head, her curls falling forward to hide her face. She touched the edge of her shoe with her toe, trying to push the peeling sole back into place. It held for a second, then slipped out again. Her eyes burned, but she blinked fast. She didn't want to cry in class. She never cried at school. Her mother always said, "Be brave at school, baby. Show the world your smile, even when the world doesn't smile back." Zarya tried. She really did. But today, her smile felt too heavy to carry. She glanced at the handmade rock in her hands. It wasn't fancy like the other kids' things, but she'd painted it carefully last night while her mom napped between double shifts. She'd stayed up late mixing colors from an old paint set her mom bought from the dollar store. Her mother had kissed her forehead when she saw the finished painting. "It's beautiful, Zarya," she whispered. "Because you made it." Zarya wanted to show it proudly. She really did. But when the class laughed, when Mrs. Ashford mocked her shoes, she felt something inside her crumble. She lifted the rock closer, whispering to it as if it were alive. "I tried." From the back of the room, Michael watched with a tightening chest. He hadn't planned to say anything during this school visit. He never did. He usually just observed quietly, donated anonymously, and left without drawing attention. But watching Zarya shrink into herself, watching the teacher encourage the class to laugh at a child, watching those worn shoes and that trembling little body, he felt memories he wished he'd forgotten surface like bruises pressed too hard. Memories of his own childhood. Memories of hiding the hole in his left sneaker by coloring it with a black marker. Memories of teachers who judged him before listening to him. Memories of classmates who laughed when he tripped because the sole of his shoe caught on the carpet. He had been a poor kid. A forgotten kid. A kid who learned to survive by going silent. But Zarya. She shouldn't have to. Not at 7 years old. Zarya tucked her painted rock into her desk gently, as if putting away a broken piece of her heart. Then she pulled out her notebook and opened to a page covered in doodles. Across the top, written in her careful, slanted handwriting. Shoes I want someday. The drawings were simple. Sparkly sneakers with little stars. Pink shoes with Velcro straps. Light-up shoes that flash when you walk. A pair of plain white ones, clean, new, untouched. She traced the outline of the first pair with her finger. Last week, she'd asked her mom softly. Do you think maybe I could have new shoes for my birthday? Her mom had paused, smile fading just a little. We'll see, baby, she said gently. We'll try. Zarya understood, we'll try. She heard it a lot. It meant her mom was trying. Always trying. But bills came first. Groceries came first. Rent came first. Shoes didn't. So Zarya had kept her old ones. She tucked tissue in the toes to fill the holes. She taped the sides so they wouldn't flap. She colored the scuffs with a brown crayon to match her old fabric. She tried. Children shouldn't have to try that hard. A boy at the next desk leaned over, whispering. Why didn't your mom buy you new ones? Is she broke? Zarya stared at the page in her notebook without answering. Another girl leaned back from 2 rows up. My mom said some people just don't take care of their kids. The teacher didn't hear it. Or maybe she didn't care to. Zarya bit her lip hard. She wished she could disappear. She wished she could run home. She wished the floor would swallow her whole. Her small fingers slipped beneath the desk and touched the loose sole of her shoe again. As if she could hold it together. As if she could hold herself together. The sole peeled away again. Another soft snap. Another reminder she wasn't like the other kids. In the back of the room, Michael's jaw tightened. His hands curled slowly into fists. He had seen enough. Zarya wasn't just embarrassed, she was humiliated. By her teacher. By her classmates. By circumstances she had no control over. He watched her. This tiny girl with warm brown skin, big hopeful eyes hiding behind curls, hands shaking as she pretended not to feel the stares. And in that moment, he made a decision. He wouldn't be a silent visitor today. He wouldn't watch another child be hurt the way he was hurt. Not while he breathed. Not while he stood in that room. Not when he could change everything. The moment Zarya brushed a tear off her cheek with her sleeve, thinking no one saw. Michael Harrington stood up from his seat in the back row. This time. He wasn't sitting back down. Michael Harrington didn't move quickly. He rose with a slow, deliberate motion. One that made no sound, yet somehow shifted the entire air in the classroom. His simple gray hoodie contrasted sharply against the neatly dressed parents and bright student artwork lining the walls. No one noticed at first. Mrs. Ashford continued calling the next student to the front, her voice overly chipper, pretending the room wasn't still buzzing with cruel whispers about Zarya's shoes. But Zarya noticed. Her eyes, still wet, flicked upward. She saw him standing. And for a moment. Even just a flicker, it looked like hope. The kind of hope that makes a child wonder. Is someone going to help me? Michael stepped out of the back row and walked slowly toward the center aisle. Not rushing. Not stomping. Not drawing attention. Just moving. Controlled. Steady. Purposeful. Some parents looked up, confused as to why one man, dressed more casually than the rest, was approaching the front. Mrs. Ashford finally noticed, her brow furrowing. "Sir," she said, sounding irritated, "parents need to remain seated. You're disrupting the class." Michael didn't stop. He wasn't even looking at her. His eyes stayed fixed on Zarya, small, trembling Zarya, who shrank in her seat as everyone turned to see where he was headed. "Sir!" Mrs. Ashford snapped louder. "This is inappropriate. Please return to the parent row." Michael stopped walking only when he reached the center of the classroom. He stood there silently, hands by his sides. The room fell quiet, not all at once, but like dominoes falling. One whisper at a time fading. One laugh dying in someone's throat. One pair of small eyes widening in surprise. Zarya's classmates stared. Even the boy who mocked her earlier stopped mid-snicker. Mrs. Ashford drew herself up, smoothing her blouse nervously. Her voice sharpened. "This is highly disruptive. Who exactly are you to interrupt my lesson?" Michael finally shifted his gaze toward her. Calmly. Evenly. With an expression that made the hairs on her neck rise. "I'm a guest," he said simply. His voice wasn't loud. But it vibrated in the quiet room with a quiet strength that felt heavy. Important. Real. Mrs. Ashford scoffed. "A guest doesn't walk around my classroom. Unless you're here with a student, please sit down." Her tone carried an assumption, one she didn't even bother hiding. That he didn't belong. That he wasn't significant. That a man in a hoodie couldn't possibly be anyone worth listening to. Michael kept his eyes on her for another beat, then slowly turned his attention back to Zarya. And that's when he saw the tiniest thing. Her hands shaking. Not from fear of him, but from fear of everyone else. Fear of more humiliation. Fear of being the center of attention again. He softened his posture, taking a slight step to the side so he wasn't towering directly over her. A gesture of safety. Of protection. Zarya inhaled shakily, her small fingers curling into fists. Mrs. Ashford folded her arms, scoffing again. "I need you to sit down immediately," she said. "We don't tolerate this kind of behavior from." Her voice died the moment Michael reached up and gently pushed his hood back. A few parents jerked upright. A whisper cut through the silence. "Is that Michael Harrington?" Another parent gasped, hand covering her mouth. "Oh my God, the Harrington Foundation donor?" Mrs. Ashford blinked, confused. "Who?" A father whispered, "The Michael Harrington. The billionaire." The room exploded into stunned murmurs. Mrs. Ashford's face went pale. Michael didn't acknowledge any of the reactions. He wasn't here to impress anyone. He wasn't here to be recognized. He was here because of a child. And when he finally spoke, he didn't talk to the teacher. He didn't talk to the parents. He didn't talk to the class. He spoke only to Zarya. Very quietly. Very gently. "May I see your shoes?" Her breath caught in her throat. She hesitated, eyes darting around the room, expecting laughter. But no one made a sound now. Because the entire class understood what it meant when a billionaire walked straight to a trembling girl who'd just been humiliated. Zarya nodded timidly. Michael crouched down. A billionaire. On the floor. In front of everyone. At the feet of a child. The classroom was motionless. He lifted the edge of her shoe gently, examining the peeling sole, the frayed edges, the tape she tried to hide. His face softened with something like pain. He looked up at her, right into her frightened eyes. "You should never feel embarrassed," he said quietly, "for something you had to make last." Zarya's breath trembled. This wasn't pity. This wasn't charity. This was understanding. Deep, personal understanding. Her lips parted, barely a whisper escaping. "Are you here for me?" Michael inhaled softly. He didn't answer. Not yet. But his eyes did. And everyone, every child, every parent, every adult, felt the shift in that room. Something enormous was coming. Something no one expected. The classroom felt unreal, suspended somewhere between shock and silence, while Michael kneeled beside Zaria's desk. Her feet were still. Her hands trembled on her lap. Her little chest rose and fell in quick, shallow breaths. She had never in her life seen an adult kneel to her like she mattered. Let alone someone like him. She swallowed hard, wiping her cheeks with the back of her sleeve. Her curls fell forward, brushing her face as she leaned just slightly toward him, barely noticeable, but enough to make the room shift again. Her voice came out small. Quiet. Fragile. Did my mom ask you to come?" Michael blinked. "No, sweetheart. She cut him off, her voice trembling. "Are you here to help me?" Her words cracked on the last syllable. Mrs. Ashford stiffened. "Oh, for goodness sake, Zaria, stop being dramatic. This man is not." Michael raised a hand gently, silencing her without even looking her way. His focus stayed on Zaria. He noticed everything. The tear stains on her cheeks. The way she held her breath waiting for someone, anyone, to be on her side. The way her eyes flickered with the tiniest spark of belief. Her next words hit him like a punch. "Are you, like, an angel my dad sent?" Gasps echoed across the room. Michael's chest tightened painfully. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Something inside him twisted at the innocence of the question. "No," he said gently. "I'm not an angel." Zaria drooped, the tiny flame in her eyes dimming. "But I'm here for you," he added softly. Her head jerked up. "Why you are?" Michael gave the faintest nod. "Yes." That single word rippled through the room like electricity. Some kids looked confused. Others sat frozen, unsure what they had just witnessed. Mrs. Ashford's jaw clenched with irritation, but fear flickered somewhere beneath it. Zaria stared at him, wide-eyed, hopeful, still scared, still unsure. Then something unexpected happened. She scooted her chair back an inch and leaned forward. And she reached for him. Not to hug him. Not to cling like she had with her mother in the past. It was smaller than that. She simply held his hoodie sleeve. A small, trembling, fingertip grip. Like she was asking him not to vanish. Michael didn't pull away. He didn't move at all. For a moment, he simply let her hold on to him, allowing that small act of trust to settle between them like something sacred. But trust never sits quietly. It draws attention. A boy across the aisle snorted loudly. "Oh wow, look at her. She thinks he's her rescuer or something." Another girl giggled. "Maybe he'll fix her crusty shoes too." Mrs. Ashford smirked, not bothering to hide it this time. "I told you, class," she said, hands on hips. "Some students just can't help themselves. Zaria always thinks someone is coming to save her." Zaria's fingers tightened on Michael's sleeve. Her lip trembled. She stared down at her shoes as the room erupted again with laughter. Michael felt it. Felt her fear. Felt her humiliation. Felt her small body shaking beside him. He rose from his kneeling position slowly, his posture shifting from gentle to something far sharper. Controlled power, cold clarity, a commanding presence he never needed to practice. Zaria's hand slipped from his sleeve, hanging uncertainly in the air. She whispered, barely audible. I didn't mean to get you in trouble." Michael turned to her, expression soft only for her. "You didn't," he said. Then he faced the class. His voice came out calm. too calm. Enough. The room froze instantly. Not because he shouted. Not because he threatened. Because something in his tone carried the weight of a man who was used to being listened to. Used to being obeyed. Used to stopping entire rooms with a single word. Mrs. Ashford opened her mouth. Then shut it again. Something in Michael's eyes made her step back without realizing it. Michael didn't look at her. Or the snickering children. He turned back to Zarya, his voice softening again. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said quietly. Zarya swallowed, fighting tears. "But they're laughing." "I know," he murmured. "But you're not alone anymore." Her breath hitched. Because deep down, after everything she had endured this morning, those were the words she had needed most. Michael straightened his back. A storm was coming. The room sensed it. Because the moment a billionaire decides a child deserves justice, every person who hurt her is about to be seen. And none of them were ready. The classroom didn't just go quiet. It tightened. Like the air itself sensed something shifting, something dangerous, something important, yet the mockery lingered on the edges, waiting to erupt again. Mrs. Ashford crossed her arms defensively, chin lifted. "Mr. Harrington," she said sharply, trying to recover control she no longer had, "I don't appreciate you interrupting my class. This behavior is—" Michael didn't look at her. He didn't acknowledge her at all. He kept his focus on Zarya. Which only made the teacher angrier. She barked, "Zarya, stand up." Zarya froze. Michael stepped subtly between them, blocking the teacher's line of sight. Mrs. Ashford's nostrils flared. "Move, sir. I won't ask again." Michael's voice was calm. Controlled. Deadly quiet. "You should be asking yourself," he said, "why you feel the need to humiliate a child." A stunned murmur rippled across the room. Mrs. Ashford laughed loudly, forced. "Humiliate? Oh, please. I was teaching her a lesson. Children must learn to present themselves properly." A girl in the front row raised her hand timidly. "Mrs. Ashford, she was crying." "Quiet," the teacher snapped. Then she pointed at Zarya's shoes again. As if presenting evidence. "Look at them. Falling apart, taped together, filthy. She should not be wearing those to school." Zarya shrank back hard, gripping the edge of her desk. A boy held his nose dramatically. "Yeah, they're gross." Another chimed in, "My mom said kids dress how their parents care about them." Giggles. Whispers. Side glances. Mrs. Ashford continued, voice growing sharper. "Children need consequences for poor appearance. If her mother won't do her job, someone must." Zarya flinched like she'd been slapped. Her mother. Her hard-working, exhausted, loving mother. Her eyes filled instantly. Michael's expression changed. Not anger. Not shock. Resolve. He stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on the back of Zarya's chair. "Take a breath, sweetheart," he said softly. But Mrs. Ashford's voice cut like a knife. "No, she needs to stand up. The class should see her shoes." Zarya's throat tightened. Her knees trembled. "No," Michael said quietly. Mrs. Ashford turned red. "Excuse me. That is my student." "That is a little girl," Michael corrected, his voice low, steady, controlled. "One you've been targeting all morning." A hush fell. Every parent now fully awake. Every child watching with wide eyes. Every breath held. Mrs. Ashford scoffed loudly. "If she doesn't want attention, she should wear better clothes. Better shoes. Something, anything, other than those pathetic things." Zarya looked down at her feet. Her shoes. Her taped, peeling, hurting shoes. Blurred behind a swell of tears. Mrs. Ashford stepped closer. "Zaria," she said coldly, "take them off." The gasp that left the classroom was sharp enough to cut air. Zaria's hands flew protectively to her shoes. "And no," she whispered. Mrs. Ashford leaned forward, voice dripping venom. "Take them off." A loud laugh burst from a boy in the corner. "Yeah. Let's see the socks too." Another voice chimed in. "Maybe she doesn't even have socks." Laughter exploded. Zaria's tears spilled over. She hugged her legs, shaking violently. Michael closed his eyes for a second. A single second. As if studying something volcanic beneath the surface. Then he stepped forward. He knelt again at Zaria's feet, and with the gentlest touch possible, he shielded them with his hands. "No one," he said softly but firmly, "is touching her shoes." The room froze. Completely. Mrs. Ashford sputtered. You can't. This is my class, mister, and I won't allow." "You've done enough," Michael said. His calmness was more terrifying than yelling. He lifted his head slightly toward her. "You've humiliated her. Encouraged children to mock her. Used a family's hardship as entertainment." Mrs. Ashford's face twitched with anger and embarrassment. "That's not true. I was teaching her a lesson," Michael repeated, rising to his full height. He towered over her. "Not just physically, morally. You're teaching children cruelty." The room vibrated with tension. A father in the back whispered, "Wow." A mother covered her mouth. One boy lowered his phone, ashamed. Mrs. Ashford folded her arms tightly. Well, maybe her mother should take responsibility. Michael's jaw flexed. "Her mother works," he said firmly. "Hard. Harder than you will ever understand." "How would you know?" she snapped. He held her gaze. Because he did know. He had grown up with a mother who worked until her hands shook. He took a step forward. "You saw a struggling child and stepped on her. That says everything." Mrs. Ashford's mouth opened to argue. But nothing came out. Not a sound. The class stared. Zaria stared. And Michael, breathing slowly, turned back to the trembling girl behind him. Zaria whispered through soft sobs. "I didn't want to be bad." Michael knelt again, cupping her small cheek gently. "You are not bad," he whispered. "And nothing about your shoes, your clothes, or your life makes you less." Her cry stuttered into silence. He brushed her tears away. "You deserve kindness," he said. "Not this." Mrs. Ashford tried one last desperate jab. "You don't understand school dynamics. Children must learn." "Children," Michael said, rising again, "learn what we show them." The room held its breath. "Today, you showed them cruelty." Dead silence. Cold reality. Then Michael stepped fully in front of Zaria, shielding her from the class, the teacher, the whispers, the humiliation. He didn't look like a visitor anymore. He looked like a protector. A force. And as he stood there, tall and unmoving, the truth settled over every person in that room. No one was getting away with hurting Zaria anymore. The room felt frozen in place, like the air itself was waiting to see what this man would do next. Zaria sat stiffly in her chair, tiny shoulders trembling, her hands gripping each other so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Her shoes, those worn, peeling shoes, were tucked under her chair like she was trying to hide them from the world. And still, she kept glancing up at Michael. As if he were the only steady thing in a room full of eyes that wanted to swallow her. Michael inhaled slowly. When he exhaled, something inside him settled. His expression changed, not loud, not dramatic, but solid. Grounded. Protective in a way Zarya had never seen from anyone besides her mother on her best days. He turned slightly toward Zarya, kneeling beside her for the third time. Not caring about his clothes, or the staring parents, or the teacher whose face was turning an ugly shade of red. He knelt because she needed an adult to kneel for her. She needed someone to meet her at eye level. She needed someone who saw her. "Zarya," he said softly, "look at me." She hesitated. Tears clung to her eyelashes, threatening to spill again. But she looked. Her big brown eyes met his. And what she saw there wasn't pity. It wasn't shock. It wasn't fear. It was something she'd never seen directed at her before. Fierce, unwavering care. Her breath hitched. Michael offered her the gentlest nod. "You did nothing wrong," he said. She swallowed, voice a whisper. "But," she said, "my shoes are embarrassing." Michael shook his head slowly. "Your shoes are a sign of strength," he said. "They show how far you've walked. How much you've carried." Her eyes widened. Like she didn't fully understand, but the kindness still touched some quiet part of her heart. She whispered, "They hurt my feet sometimes." Michael's hand tightened gently on the back of her chair. "I know," he murmured. "And it should never have been something you had to hide." Behind them, Mrs. Ashford scoffed loudly. "This is ridiculous. You're rewarding her for being unprepared." "I refuse to let." Michael stood. Not abruptly. Not aggressively. Steadily. As he rose, the atmosphere shifted again, like the weight in the room redistributed itself around him. He now stood between Zarya and the rest of the classroom. A shield. A wall. A protector. He turned to the teacher. "Sit down, Mrs. Ashford." Gasps scattered. She opened her mouth, outraged. "Sit," Michael repeated, and this time his voice was low, anchored, and commanding, not angry, but the kind of tone people obey without thinking. Mrs. Ashford's hand twitched. And to the shock of every child watching, she sat. Michael didn't spare her another glance. He turned his attention to the class, scanning the faces, wide eyes, frightened stares, guilt, confusion, shame. "You laughed at her," he said quietly. No one moved. "You laughed at her, because she's trying her best." Kids looked down at their desks. "You laughed at her," he continued, "because you were led by an adult who should know better." He didn't raise his voice. But his words carried like thunder. "And you laughed," he said, "because none of you realized she could hear every word." Zarya's breath stuttered behind him. Michael's jaw tightened slightly. He looked at her again briefly, only for a moment, and the softness returned. Her small hands still trembled. He placed one hand gently on her shoulder. She flinched at first. Then melted into the contact like she'd been holding herself together for far too long. "Deep breath," he whispered. She inhaled shakily. Again. Another breath. Her shoulders eased slightly. He stayed there, hand on her shoulder, steady, grounding, until she finally unclenched her fingers. Then he looked back at the class. "When you mock someone for what they don't have," he said slowly, "you're showing what you are missing. Silence. You're missing kindness. You're missing empathy. You're missing courage." A girl in the front wiped her eyes. A boy hugged his arms uncomfortably. Michael continued. "And when a teacher, the person responsible for your safety, encourages that cruelty." His voice cooled. "That is the greatest failure in this room." Mrs. Ashford went pale. Michael didn't look at her again. He knelt by Zarya once more, brushing away a tear with the side of his thumb. "You are not alone," he said softly. Zarya's lip trembled. "You promise?" Michael swallowed hard, because promises meant something to him. Especially to children who have been let down too many times. He placed his hand over hers. I promise. Her fingers curled around his instinctively. For the first time since the humiliation began. Zarya breathed without shaking. For the first time. She leaned on someone else. For the first time. She wasn't invisible. Michael rose again, placing himself fully in front of her. Whatever happened next. Whoever he had to confront. Whatever truths needed to be spoken. Zarya would not face it alone. Not anymore. The classroom felt like something alive. Breathing, tightening, waiting. Children hunched in their seats. Parents leaned forward, eyes sharp with curiosity. Even the fluorescent lights above seemed to dim under the weight of what was coming. Michael Harrington stood in the center of the room, his presence steady and unshakable. One hand rested gently on Zarya's shoulder, the other hanging loosely by his side. Mrs. Ashford tried to reassert control. This has gone too far, she stammered, voice wobbling between anger and fear. You are a visitor, and you are overstepping. I will not have you turning my classroom into a spectacle. Michael didn't even turn to her. Instead, he addressed the room. His voice calm. Measured. Powerful. Does anyone here know, he asked quietly, what it feels like to be laughed at, for something you can't control? A few hands hovered in the air, hesitant, unsure. He didn't need them. He already knew the answer. He continued. Do you know what it feels like to walk into a room and immediately feel like you don't belong? Silence. Do you know how hard it is for a child, he touched Zarya's shoulder gently, to come to school already hurting, already carrying weight most adults couldn't bear, only to be shamed by the very person trusted to protect her? Mrs. Ashford bristled. That is an outrageous accusation. I've done nothing but teach her. Michael finally looked at her. And the room went dead still. No, he said. You didn't teach her. His voice lowered, growing sharper with every word. You humiliated her. You targeted her. You encouraged children to mock her. He gestured toward the class. And they followed your lead. A boy near the front lowered his gaze, cheeks burning red. Mrs. Ashford's hands shook slightly. I was teaching a lesson on responsibility. Responsibility? Michael repeated. Is it responsible to tell a 7-year-old she should be embarrassed for not having something her family can't afford? Mrs. Ashford opened her mouth. Nothing came out. The truth hung between them. Michael continued. You shamed a little girl over shoes she's been trying to keep together with tape. Shoes that hurt her feet every day. Shoes she made last because her mother works 3 jobs to keep her fed. A ripple of discomfort spread among the parents. One mother whispered to another, 3 jobs. Oh my goodness. Michael's jaw tightened. And you, he said, turning to the students, laughed along with her. Kids shrank in their seats. A girl wiped her eyes and whispered, I didn't know she was hurting. Michael nodded slightly. I know you didn't. Because the adult guiding you didn't care enough to see it. Mrs. Ashford's voice cracked. That's not fair. Fair. Michael said, turning fully toward her. Fair is giving every child in this room dignity. Fair is understanding that children come from different circumstances. Fair is teaching them compassion, not cruelty. He stepped forward. For a teacher, that is your most sacred responsibility. The room vibrated with the weight of those words. Mrs. Ashford took a step back. Maybe if her mother. Michael's expression hardened. Leave her mother out of your mouth. Gasps shot across the room. A few parents exchanged stunned looks. Mrs. Ashford's face went beet red. I will not be spoken to like. You should be spoken to like someone who failed, Michael said. Because that's what you did today. The teacher stumbled back into her desk. Michael turned toward the parents now, all of them staring, all of them silent. "You send your children here trusting this classroom is safe," he said. "Safe to ask questions. Safe to make mistakes. Safe to be different." His voice softened slightly. But today, it wasn't safe. Not for her. He gestured to Zarya. Her small hands were gripping the edge of her desk. She looked so tiny behind him. And yet, for the first time, she didn't look alone. Michael turned to the class again. "You're learning more from her," he said, "than you learned from any part of today's lesson." Kids blinked. Parents leaned closer. Zarya looked up, confused. Michael's voice grew warm, steady, guiding. "You're learning what courage looks like," he said. "Because courage is coming to school in shoes that hurt just so your mother doesn't worry, even when you know people might laugh." A hush spread. "You're learning what strength looks like," he continued. "Strength is trying your best with what you have, when others expect you to fail." A boy sniffled, glancing at Zarya guiltily. "And you're learning what kindness should look like," he added, "because she showed more grace today, while being humiliated, than any of us did." Zarya's lips parted slightly, breath shaky. Michael lowered himself slowly until he was kneeling beside her again. "Zarya," he said, voice soft, "you didn't deserve a single thing that happened to you today." Her eyes filled again. "But you handled it like a lion," he whispered. A tear slipped down her cheek. She choked out softly. "I just wanted to show my rock." Michael smiled gently. "Then show me," he said. He extended his hand. Zarya blinked, startled. "You want to see it?" "I want to see everything you're proud of." The words hit deep. She opened her desk with trembling hands and lifted her painted rock carefully, like it was precious. She placed it in his hand. Michael inhaled. The rock was painted in swirling blues and golds, messy, imperfect, beautiful. A child's heart poured into art. He held it like it was something fragile. "Zarya," he said softly, "this is incredible." She covered her mouth with both hands, her chest rising in little gasps. Someone finally saw her. Finally valued what she had made. Finally told her she mattered. Michael rose, holding the rock carefully, and addressed the class. "This is what a child should be praised for." Then he looked straight at Mrs. Ashford. "And this is what you failed to celebrate." The teacher's knees buckled. She fell into her chair. A father whispered, "He's right." A mother said softly, "I'd pull my child out of this class." Mrs. Ashford's face crumpled as she realized the room had turned against her. And Michael wasn't finished yet. He placed the rock gently on Zarya's desk. Then he asked the question that sealed everything. Who else in this room is willing to apologize to her? Dead silence. Until a girl stood up. "I'm sorry, Zarya." Then a boy. "I'm sorry." Then another. And another. The shift was unmistakable. Cruelty had been replaced with accountability. Mockery replaced with empathy. Fear replaced with respect. And at the center of it all, Zarya sat stunned, tears falling freely, protected by the man who refused to let her be invisible. A billionaire in a hoodie. A shield. A force. A protector. And this was only the beginning. The classroom slowly loosened its grip on the tension that had been strangling it moments before. Some kids remained stiff in their chairs, unsure of what to say. Some looked away, embarrassed by their own actions. Others stared at Michael like they were seeing an entirely new kind of adult, one who didn't yell, didn't threaten, didn't shame, but still held an impossible kind of power. But for Michael, the world had shrunk to one child. Zarya. Her shoulders were still trembling. Her eyes swollen and glossy. her tiny hands twisting together in her lap. He could see the exhaustion in the way she held herself. The way a child holds onto their last thread of dignity. Michael leaned down slightly and whispered. "Would you like to step out with me for a moment?" Zarya blinked, startled. She'd never been asked gently to leave a room. She'd only ever been sent outside as punishment. Am I in trouble?" she whispered. Michael's heart nearly cracked. "No," he said softly. "You're not in trouble. I just want to make sure you're okay." She hesitated. Then nodded. He offered his hand. Not pushing, not insisting, just offering. And when she slipped her small hand into his, it wasn't fear. It was trust. He guided her slowly toward the hallway. The class watched silently, some remorseful, some confused, some awestruck. As the door closed behind them, the hallway fell into a peaceful hush. No whispering children. No judgmental eyes. No cruel jokes echoing around her. Just the soft hum of distant classroom voices and the faint scent of cleaning spray from the freshly mopped floors. Michael walked with her down the hall, staying beside her, matching her small pace. They stopped near a quiet reading corner with beanbags and a poster that said, "Be kind, everyone's fighting a battle you can't see." How ironic. Zarya sat on a beanbag carefully, holding her hands in her lap, looking at her knees. Michael sat on the floor beside her, still choosing to come down to her level. He didn't speak at first. He let her breathe. Let her settle. Let her exist without pressure. After a minute, he said gently, "Do your feet hurt?" Zarya nodded slowly. "A little, but I'm used to it." He felt that. Deeply. No child should have to be used to pain. He lowered his voice. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" Zarya shrugged one tiny shoulder. "Mommy already has a lot to do. She's so tired, and I didn't want her to feel bad." Michael closed his eyes briefly. This child. This tiny, brave, self-sacrificing child. Carrying more than any 7-year-old ever should. He opened his eyes again, softer. "You're very thoughtful," he said. Zarya blinked. "No one ever said that about me." Michael smiled gently. "Well, then they weren't paying attention." A faint, trembling smile tugged at her lips, small but real. She sniffled, rubbing her eye with the back of her hand. I didn't want them to laugh. I tried to hide the tape." Her voice cracked. "I tried so hard." He placed his hand over hers, light, warm, reassuring. "You shouldn't have to try that hard to be treated with kindness," he said. She looked up at him with teary eyes. "Why did you help me?" Michael took a slow breath. Memories flashed, his own childhood shoes that flapped when he ran, the kids who called him, poor boy, the teacher who made him stand in front of the class for having improper attire. He pushed those memories aside gently, not wanting to place his pain onto her. "Because someone should have helped me when I was your age," he said softly. "And no one did." Zarya's eyebrows lifted slightly. "You had bad shoes too." Michael nodded once. "Worse." Her eyes widened. "But you're rich." He smiled at her innocence. "I wasn't always." She digested that, then whispered. "Did people laugh at you too?" Michael's eyes softened with sadness and strength. "Yes. They did." Zarya looked down at her feet again, at the peeling soles, the scuffed sides, the tape she'd colored brown. "So, you understand." He felt that in his soul. "I do," he said. "More than you know." Silence fell between them, the warm kind, the healing kind. She leaned slightly toward him, barely noticeable, but enough for him to understand what she needed. Not a hero. Not a savior. Just someone steady. Mr. Michael, she whispered. Yes, sweetheart. Are you going away now? His eyes softened. No, he said gently. I'm not going anywhere. She released a shaky breath she'd been holding. Michael adjusted her shoe carefully, tucking the loose sole in again, not as a fix, but as a gesture. A quiet promise. You don't have to do anything alone today, he said. For the first time all morning. Zarya leaned her small shoulder fully against him. And Michael didn't move. He stayed right there, quiet, warm, steady, like a wall she could rest against. Like the protector she didn't know she'd needed. The hallway had settled into a gentle quiet. Zarya leaned against Michael's side, finally breathing without shaking. Her small fingers picked at the edge of her sweater, calmer now, but still fragile, like a sparrow who had crashed into a window but survived. Michael sat with her in the reading corner, keeping a respectful inch of space but staying close enough that she felt safe. His presence was a solid anchor, grounding her in a world that had felt cruel just minutes before. Then, the rapid clicking of rushed footsteps echoed from around the corner. Urgent. Uneven. Panicked. Zarya's head snapped up instantly. Mommy? The footsteps rounded the corner. And there she was. Naomi Malik. Zarya's mother. Faded scrubs. Hair in a frizzy bun that had once been neat before exhaustion tore it apart. Shoes worn thin from 12-hour shifts. Face glistening with sweat, panic, and fear. Her eyes darted wildly. Searching desperately. Heart beating faster than her feet could carry her. Then she saw her daughter. Zarya. She rushed forward, almost stumbling. Zarya sprang from the beanbag chair, running straight into her mother's arms with such force that Naomi staggered but didn't let go. She wrapped both arms around her daughter like she was afraid she might vanish. Oh my baby, Naomi whispered, voice shaking. Are you hurt? What happened? Why did the school call me? Why are you crying? Zarya clung to her mother, burying her face in her chest. They laughed at me, she whimpered. And my shoes. Naomi's entire body tensed violently. She cupped Zarya's cheeks, brushing the tears away frantically. No, sweetheart, look at me, she said, voice cracking. You listen to mommy, there is nothing wrong with you. Do you hear me? Nothing. Her hands trembled with guilt and fury. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry you had to go through that alone. Michael stepped forward slightly, but carefully, making sure not to intrude on the sacred moment. Mrs. Malik. Naomi stiffened, shielding Zarya instinctively. Who are you? She asked, voice firm but shaken. I'm Michael Harrington, he said gently. She blinked. The Michael Harrington, she repeated, stunned. The foundation donor? The one who, why are you here? His voice remained soft. To help your daughter. Naomi's eyes flicked down to Zarya. Zarya, whose shoes were peeling, whose cheeks were red from crying, whose whole body looked exhausted from holding and hurt. Help her. Naomi said, voice breaking. How? By watching while kids tore her apart. By letting her teacher humiliate her. Michael shook his head. No, he said quietly. I intervened. And I stayed with her until you came. Zarya tugged gently on her mother's sleeve. Mommy, he helped me. He protected me. Something inside Naomi melted, just a little. She turned back to Michael, scanning his expression, searching for the catch, the pity, the judgment she had seen from so many others. But she found none. Only sincerity. Only warmth. Only a man who looked like he had seen more than he wanted to see. Naomi exhaled shakily. I'm sorry, she said, brushing a tear from her cheek. When the school called and said something happened, I ran out of work without even clocking out. I thought. Her voice cracked. I thought something terrible happened. Michael shook his head gently. She's safe, he said. She wasn't treated kindly, but she's safe. Naomi closed her eyes, relief flooding her bones. Then she looked at him again, this time softer. What exactly happened? Michael hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Her teacher singled her out, he said quietly. Mocked her shoes. Encouraged the class to laugh. Naomi's lips parted in stunned horror. She what? Zaria gripped her mother's arm tighter. She made me take off my shoes, Zaria whispered. In front of everyone. Naomi spun around, fury flashing across her face. She made you what? Michael gently placed a calming hand near her shoulder, not touching, just grounding. I confronted her, he said. The situation will be addressed. Naomi swallowed hard, shaking. I try, she whispered. I work so many hours. I try so hard to keep up. I didn't know the shoes got this bad, I thought. Mrs. Malik, Michael said softly, stopping her spiral, you didn't fail her. Tears welled in her eyes instantly. You don't know how hard things have been. I know you're doing everything you can, he said. And I respect that. Her breath hitched. Respect. A word she hadn't heard from anyone in a long time. Zaria leaned her head against her mother's stomach, still shaken. Naomi smoothed her hair gently. Thank you, she whispered to Michael. For helping her. For staying with her. He nodded once. I'm not going anywhere. Naomi looked at him, confused but hopeful. And standing there, mother, daughter, billionaire, the first fragile threads of trust began to weave between them. The hallway still hummed with lingering tension from everything that had happened, but Michael knew the next steps mattered more than anything he had said inside that classroom. It wasn't enough to defend a child in public. He needed to give her a moment to remember what safety felt like. And Naomi, exhausted, overworked, protective to the bone, needed it just as much. Naomi rubbed Zaria's arm gently, trying to soothe her trembling. Do you want to go home, baby? She whispered. Zaria hesitated. Can we leave the school? She asked it in a small, fragile voice, as though even the building itself had betrayed her. Of course we can, Naomi said, kissing her forehead. Michael stepped forward softly. Would it be all right, he asked carefully, if I took you both somewhere? Somewhere quieter. Naomi stiffened instinctively. I don't know if. Zaria tugged her sleeve. Mommy, please. I don't want to go home yet. I wanna feel better first. The innocence of her request hit Naomi harder than any argument could. She exhaled, long and tired, then nodded cautiously. Just someplace public, she said. Where she can relax. Nothing fancy. Michael nodded. I know the perfect place. He walked beside them to the parking lot, matching their pace. When they arrived, Naomi blinked in disbelief at the sleek black SUV that chirped as Michael unlocked it. She whispered under her breath. Oh Lord, this is real. Zaria climbed into the back seat, instantly relaxing against the soft leather as if sinking into clouds. Michael opened Naomi's door gently, a gesture that startled her. No one's opened a door for me in years, she murmured before she could stop herself. Michael paused. You deserve it. She looked away quickly, blinking hard. The drive was quiet but warm, Zaria humming softly as the city passed by. When Michael pulled into a small, cozy local shoe shop, not a fancy luxury store, Naomi looked at him in confusion. Why here? She asked. Michael smiled softly. Because the best shoes for kids aren't the expensive ones, they're the comfortable ones. Inside, rows of colorful sneakers lined the walls. Zaria's eyes widened in awe. She had never seen so many choices. A kind older woman behind the counter called, "Let me know if you need anything." Zaria whispered, Can I look?" Michael chuckled gently. "Sweetheart, you can try as many as you want." She gasped. Naomi bit her lip, overwhelmed. "Oh no, Mr. Harrington, we can't buy." Michael gently shook his head. "This is not charity," he said softly. "This is kindness. And she deserves it." Zaria wandered to a row of sparkly sneakers and traced her finger along them. "These are the ones from my drawing," she whispered. Michael knelt beside her, looking up at the row with her. "Then let's try them." A worker helped measure her feet, humming warmly while Zaria lifted her foot shyly. "She's been wearing the wrong size for a while," the woman said gently. Zaria looked up at Michael. "I grew." He smiled. "Yes. You did." They tried on pair after pair. Pink ones with glitter. Blue ones with light-up soles. White ones that would match her Sunday dress. Soft running shoes with cushioned insoles. Every time Zaria stood and walked, her eyes lit up brighter. "These don't hurt," she giggled, bouncing. Naomi pressed her hand to her chest, tears slipping down her cheeks. Michael glanced at her, quietly, respectfully. "Thank you," she whispered. "I couldn't. I haven't been able to." "You don't have to explain," he said softly. "You're doing your best." When Zaria settled on 3 pairs she loved, Michael didn't choose for her, just encouraged her. She hugged him suddenly, arms around his waist. "Thank you," she whispered into his coat. "I feel special." He knelt and hugged her back. "You are." After the shoe store, Michael suggested they eat. Naomi tried to protest, but her growling stomach betrayed her. They ended up in a quiet, old-fashioned diner with red vinyl booths and the smell of fries and grilled cheese warming the air. Zaria slid into a booth seat beside Michael without thinking. Naomi blinked at the sight. You can sit with him if you want," she said softly. Zaria smiled shyly. Michael gave her a napkin. "You've got paint from your rock on your cheek," he said gently. She wiped quickly, giggling. The waitress came over with menus. Zaria whispered, "Do they have pancakes?" "At this hour?" Michael asked. Naomi shook her head. "They don't." "Of course we do," the waitress said cheerfully. Zaria gasped. "Pancakes." Michael winked. She giggled again. During the meal, Michael didn't ask about her pain. He asked about her hobbies, her drawings, her favorite colors. And Zaria, surprisingly, opened up. She learned that Michael used to draw too. And that he used to patch up shoes with tape just like she did. A silent understanding passed between them. Naomi watched, stunned. She had never seen her daughter this relaxed with a stranger. At one point, Zaria scooted closer and leaned her head lightly against Michael's arm. Naomi inhaled sharply. Michael looked at her. "Is this all right?" Zaria nodded sleepily. Naomi wiped a tear and whispered. "I haven't seen her trust anyone like that since her father." Michael's chest tightened. He rested his hand gently on Zaria's shoulder. "She deserves to feel safe." Before heading home, they stopped at a quiet park nearby. The sun had dipped low, leaving streaks of orange across the sky. Zaria, wearing her brand new sparkly sneakers, stepped into the grass. Then she ran. Not careful steps. Not tiny, protective steps. She ran. Laughing. Sprinting. Jumping. Her little feet carrying her freely for the first time in months. Naomi pressed her fingers to her lips, tears streaming. Michael stood beside her, hands in his pockets, watching. She hasn't played like that in a long time, Naomi whispered. She's been carrying too much, Michael said softly. Naomi nodded. Sometimes I feel like everything I do isn't enough. Michael turned to her. You're raising a brave child, he said. That's more than enough. She looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time. Not as a billionaire. Not as a stranger. As a man who saw her daughter. And saw her. When they finally reached their small apartment building, Naomi nervously pushed open the door. It's not much, she said. It's a home, Michael replied simply. Zarya showed him her drawings. Her tiny bed with the peeling unicorn stickers. Her bookshelf with books donated from the library. Michael didn't judge. Didn't pity. He admired. And Naomi felt something loosen in her chest. Someone saw the love in their home, not the lack. When the sky turned dark, Naomi gently said. All right, baby. It's time to get ready for bed. Zarya rubbed her eyes. Then looked at Michael shyly. Mr. Michael? Yes, sweetheart. Will you read me a story? Naomi froze. Oh, baby, he's busy. Michael smiled softly. I'd be honored. He sat at the edge of her small bed, reading from a worn picture book. Zarya curled against his arm. Her breathing slowed. Her eyelids drooped. She fell asleep holding his sleeve. Naomi stood in the doorway, tears silently falling. When Michael gently tucked Zarya in and placed her new shoes beside the bed, Naomi whispered. You didn't have to do any of this. Michael turned to her. She needed someone today, he said quietly. And I was here. Naomi looked at him with gratitude so deep it was almost painful. Thank you, she whispered. Michael nodded once. She deserves to feel safe. Every day. Naomi nodded too, wiping her tears. So do you, he added softly. She froze, breath catching. No one had said that to her in years. The apartment had quieted into that gentle stillness that only comes after a long, emotional day. The hum of the refrigerator. The soft ticking of a wall clock. The muted sound of cars passing outside the window. Naomi walked Michael toward the living room, speaking softly so she wouldn't wake Zarya. I can't thank you enough, she whispered. You didn't just defend her. You gave her joy today. Real joy. I haven't seen that in a while. Michael shook his head lightly. She gave me something too, he said. Perspective. Naomi smiled faintly, tired but genuine. But before she could respond, they heard soft footsteps behind them. Both turned. Zarya stood in the hallway, rubbing her sleepy eyes with the back of her hand. Her new sparkly sneakers were on her feet, with the lights blinking dimly each time she shifted her weight. Naomi whispered, Baby, you're supposed to be in bed. But Zarya shook her head gently and walked toward Michael. In her hands, she held something small and familiar. Her painted rock. The one she brought to school. The one she'd held so tightly while being mocked. The one Michael had admired like it was a piece of art. She looked up at him with shy determination. Mr. Michael, she whispered. He knelt automatically, leveling with her eyes. Yes, sweetheart. Her little hands trembled as she held out the rock toward him. For you. Michael blinked, taken aback. He didn't take it yet. Zarya, he said softly, this is your show and shine rock. You made it. It's special to you. She nodded. That's why I want you to have it. Michael's chest tightened. Her voice wavered, but her eyes stayed steady. You made me feel brave today, she said. You talked to me like I wasn't invisible. You helped me when everyone was laughing. A tear slid down her cheek, not from sadness now, but from release. "You're the first grown-up," she whispered, "who made me feel important." Michael felt his throat close. He reached out slowly, carefully, as though he were being handed something sacred. "You honor me," he said, voice thick. "More than you know." Zarya placed the rock in his palm, small, warm, painted with swirls of blue and gold and love. Michael closed his fingers around it gently. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around his neck in a tiny but fierce hug. Not shaky this time. Not fearful. Just pure gratitude. He hugged her back, closing his eyes for a moment. Naomi watched the scene, tears streaming silently. Not out of pain, but because she was witnessing someone truly see her daughter. Zarya pulled back slightly and whispered. "Now you have something from me, like I have something from you." Michael nodded. "I'll keep it safe," he said softly. "Always." And he meant it. Every word. She yawned then, big and sleepy. Michael brushed a curl from her forehead. "Come on," Naomi said gently. "Back to bed." Zarya walked back toward her room, turning once to give Michael the tiniest smile. Then she disappeared down the hallway. Michael stood slowly, clutching the rock with care, as though it were a priceless gift. Because to him, it was. By the time Naomi walked back into the living room, Michael was still standing in the same place, shoulders relaxed, expression soft, and Zarya's painted rock resting delicately in his hand like a fragile treasure. The apartment lights cast a warm gold glow across the room, giving everything a quiet, peaceful softness. The storm of the day had finally settled. But something new hovered gently in the air. A sense of beginning. Naomi exhaled long and slow, brushing her palms over her scrubs. "She's finally asleep," she whispered. "Poor thing, she held on to my hand until the last second." Michael smiled gently. "She's a brave little girl. She just needed someone to remind her." Naomi looked at him. Really looked at him, and her eyes filled again, but this time it wasn't exhaustion or panic. It was gratitude so deep her chest couldn't hold it. "I don't know how to say thank you," she murmured, voice trembling. "You don't need to." Michael's tone was warm, steady. "I was here. That's all." Naomi shook her head softly. "No one's ever stepped in for her like that," she said. "No man, no one has ever protected her that way." Michael lowered his gaze for a moment, brushing his thumb gently over the surface of the painted rock. "I know what it feels like," he said quietly. "To be the child no one stood up for." Naomi swallowed hard. "Then, maybe that's why she trusts you." Michael looked at her with a softness that surprised even him. "I won't break that trust," he said. The room fell into a stillness that felt almost sacred. Naomi wrapped her arms around herself and stepped closer. Not invading his space, but standing near enough to show she wasn't afraid anymore. "She asked me," Naomi whispered, "if you were going to disappear like other people do." Michael's breath hitched, just barely. He looked toward the hallway where Zarya had disappeared moments ago. "What did you tell her?" he asked. Naomi's voice wavered. "I told her I didn't know." Michael nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of the truth. Then he lifted his eyes, steady and certain. "You can tell her now," he said softly. "I'm coming back." Naomi blinked, taken aback by the clarity in his voice. You mean that?" Michael nodded once. "Yes. I do." He looked toward the front door now, preparing to leave, but the atmosphere had shifted. His departure wasn't cold, or distant, or final. It was a pause. A soft closing of today's chapter. Not the end. He stepped toward the door, and Naomi walked with him. At the doorway, he turned back, meeting her eyes with a sincerity that rooted her in place. "I'll check in tomorrow," he said. To see how she is. And if she needs anything. Naomi pressed her lips together, fighting a wave of emotion. Thank you, she whispered. I don't know what she did in a past life to deserve this kindness, but, thank you. Michael shook his head. She didn't do anything. She just needed someone to see her. Then, almost shyly, he lifted the painted rock slightly. And she gave me this, he said. That means more than you can imagine. Naomi smiled, small, tired, but full of something new. Hope. He reached for the doorknob and paused once more. If you or Zarya ever need anything, he said quietly, you call me. Naomi nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. We will. Michael stepped outside into the cool night air. But before he walked to his car, he looked up at the apartment window, the light still glowing softly inside. He held the painted rock to his chest. And he whispered, almost to himself. She won't stand alone again. Then, with a final soft nod, he walked down the steps, disappearing into the calm night. But the promise he left behind. I'll come back. Lingered in the hallway like a gentle reminder that something had shifted forever. Inside the apartment, Naomi peeked into her daughter's room. Zarya, half asleep, whispered. Mommy, is he coming back? Naomi stroked her hair. Yes, baby, she whispered through a smile. He's coming back.